G'day fans, guess what? We're back again. If you watched DNA reviews a couple of days ago, Aaron and I were yapping on about the Docky Who, but we've moved on since then because now we're talking about all this other exciting stuff. And I tell you what, Aaron, there is just stuff happening everywhere. My mind is just blowing even as we speak. What do you reckon?
I know, it's been an exciting week already. Trailers have dropped, other things have happened. We've got plenty to talk about.
I tell you what, you're not wrong. So it's very, very funny, fans. There's a whole lot of things we're going to cover off. First things first, just very, very quickly. How you doing, old son? I only saw you 2 days ago, but just for the sake of the argument, you're traveling well?
I'm still getting over the 2 Doctor Who episodes, but apart from that, everything's been good. Back in the shop, still cleaning up. Like, unbelievably, you can see the front desk in the shop. All of yesterday was my goal was to clean the front desk. So that's, for anyone who's been in, that doesn't happen very much.
You're absolutely right. It's like a carpet of just rubbish most of the time. All right, so we're going to kick this off because we've got so much to cover off, including things that only just occurred like an hour ago. So we're just going to wind everything back a little bit, and I'm just going to cover off a couple of things regarding fandom. So science fiction fandom for those who are interested in this. A book is about to be released very, very soon. This is not like the target audience for everybody, but you never know. Somebody might be interested in this. It's actually a book. It's actually part 1 of 2, I believe, called Proud and Lonely, and it's about the history of science fiction fandom in Australia. And from 1936 to 1961, I know the guy who's actually writing this book, and he's doing a complete history of how fandom worked in this country. And it's a fascinating journey seeing how, like, these days there are science fiction fans everywhere in this country, and fan clubs everywhere and wherever else. But there was once a time when it didn't exist at all. And so this guy's been doing all this historical research, which I found to be really interesting. I have seen snippets of what was written. For those who don't know, it all started in Sydney and like in the late 30s, and then sort of migrated its way down to Melbourne. So I just wanted to put that out there. It gets launched officially at an event on Saturday, which I'm about to bring up in a second. But if you're interested in the history of fandom, and I guess you have to be around for a long time to really dial into it, it could be a good read. And the person on the cover, for those who may or may not have picked up, was good old Mr. Merv Binns, who ran the old Sci-Fi books store. Science, yeah, what was it called? Yeah, Sci-Fi books, yeah.
Space Age books.
Space Age, yeah. I knew Sci-Fi wasn't right. Space Age books back in the day. So, yeah, it should be a very interesting bit of history for those who like that sort of thing.
And used to turn up at conventions for decades and decades with books and keeping the dealer's room full of stuff to read. Spoiler for you, it's a cookbook.
He had a certain man, exactly right. So that's getting launched soon. And I mean, once we get into part, go on.
I find that interesting because that's the book I always thought that you should write on Australian fandom.
Oh, it's way before my time. I mean, Christ, even when it gets to the end of part 1, I still don't exist in the world as yet. So, yeah, it's actually quite interesting. So, but I do know that once you get from the 60s into the 70s, the fan community changes completely. Media fandom starts to make an appearance. You can thank Star Trek for that primarily, for what happened in the 70s. And by the end of the 70s, the media fans who like movies and TV shows had sort of found their place in the world. Rusky Babe said he's in it as a fetus. Okay, there we go. Sure, someone's going to write about that, which would be very, very interesting stuff. Oh, hang on. This is something. Oh, here we go. Got one of these for the first time tonight. And just quickly from Rusky Babes, he's saying that the old MSFC meeting place, which was Space Age Books, actually appeared in a classic sci-fi movie. That would probably be on the beach as a guess. So there you go. Speaking with the fan thing, I haven't got rid of it just yet. This weekend, there's a national science fiction convention occurring in Melbourne called Continuum 16. The reason why I'm putting this here is because it's the only non-profit fan-run science fiction convention in Melbourne, right? That's the only one, right? You got all the big pop culture expos and all the pro cons, and everybody's making money left, right, and center. This, at least, is a traditional style convention, and it's occurring this weekend in the city. So, unfortunately, like most traditional conventions, it's not necessarily cheap to go to, and it does cover literature as well as media fandom. But if you're into that sort of thing, you got nothing on, you might want to go down and check it out, or at least go on the website and have a sticky beak. As mentioned down the bottom here at continuum.org.au. So that's the reason why I wanted to fly their flag, because it's a fan-run con like we used to do in the old days. And now they are pretty much a dead entity. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, I do think it's one of those that would be really worth checking out. It's almost it won't be as good as Con 80 or any of those, of course, ran by yours truly, but it is nice to see that the non-profit sort of media conventions are still happening. So it is one I would definitely check out if you have a chance.
I like how you said yours truly. Yours truly means you.
I was talking about you.
I know that when you said yours truly, go, you weren't even there for two of them. So what are you talking about? So that's funny. You make me laugh. I get where you were coming from. That was kind of amusing. Also, sticking with some funny stuff. This is a bit of an update from a few weeks ago. You remember I made a point of posting this picture of the mural that I painted in my high school wall that turns 40 years old this year. Make a mention about the fact that there's a door that got put into the mural while I was in school at the time. So this is my high school. So I painted this in 1984. It was all finished, wonderful, fantastic.
Yep.
Well, I got an updated photograph of it just the other day, right? Because I contacted the school and said, is it still there? And they go, yeah, it's still there. And they've stuck freaking lockers in front of it. And not only that, they've stuck bins in front and this freaking big ass sticker. And of course, hang on, what happened to the door? Well, how do the disabled people go to the toilet if the freaking lockers are in the way? So, geez, how's that?
They actually put those lockers there to discourage Colin from turning up.
Yeah, very good. So anyway, I got that picture and I thought, well, at least the thing's still there. But when they stuck the lockers in front, I go, are you freaking kidding me? In front of what was the disabled toilet. So I just don't get that at all. So anyway, not to worry. So I don't need to go there
At least
in
it's
June.
still there. At least they haven't. Yeah. At least it's still there. At least they haven't covered it over with something else, like big rainbow flags or something like that.
Yeah, good point. And Colin at least got the joke, so which is actually kind of cool. That's cool. They could have at least painted the lockers to make it look like the Death Star. That's a good point, actually. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens in the long term. But as I said to the person when I was speaking to them, I said, oh, well, that painting's been in the school longer than any of the employees, most likely 40 years. So anyway, right, Rusky Babes, the toilet really is disabled because you can't get to the damn thing. So anyway, but I thought it was a little bit disgraceful. Anyway, you are right. It could have been painted over or destroyed.
Well,
so anyway, not to worry. Sorry, dude.
I hope they let the disabled children out of the. I hope they let the disabled children out of the toilet before they put the locker in front of
I think we got the process a bit wrong. You let the people out before you put the lockers in. Yes, exactly right. Yeah, that's the old joke from Batman Returns. The tree lights up and then I push the button. Unbelievable. Anyway, so that's all that stuff out of the way. Now we get into the serious stuff. Now this only occurred like a couple of hours ago, like an hour before we went on air. This thing popped up and I go, holy guacamole! They've released the trailer for a new TV series called Dune Prophecy. And to be frankly honest, I didn't even know this thing was even being made. It's completely thrown me off out of absolute nowhere. And I had to have a look at it and go, what the hell is this about? And it covers off the history of the Bene Gesserit. It's a TV series. It'll be on a streaming service of Max when it comes out. And I thought, holy guacamole, who knew? So the whole Dune thing has really taken off at the moment. Going, well, the movie's coming out from Denis Villeneuve. You know, this series coming out, and of course, there's talk of the potentially the third film. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron? It's a bit of a mind spin, don't you reckon?
Well, I guess it's one of those things. Whenever something's popular on the big screen, there's always a streaming service that'll put their hand up and try and ruin it by making a TV series that we don't need. That said, I will watch it and I'll go into it very open mind because I love the Dune universe. And if they can flesh it out properly and honor the books, it'll be good. It's just Dags. I know when they start gender swapping the Bene Gesserits into men, that's when it's going to hit some real problems.
Wouldn't that be the funniest thing ever? So like, yeah, take that, you flag flying heroes. So I did some research. And I thought, because the story of the show is about two sisters who are Harkonnen sisters, saying Harkonnen, not Harkonnen, Harkonnen sisters, who effectively found the Bene Gesserit sisterhood. And I did some quick research to say, was that covered off in any of the Legends of Dune novels? And apparently it wasn't. So maybe it's a bit of untapped real estate that they can sort of tackle into. It's 10,000 years before Dune. So yeah, it's sort of like in the same universe, but completely at a different timescale. So who knows where it's going to go or whether it's going to be any good. But if you're into Dune, or Dunny, as a mate of mine likes to call it, it might be something that people really get dialed into. So there you go. It's just like this one, only, as I said, only came out an hour or two ago. So what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where I think maybe they're doing the Game of Thrones, where the main series ended. So they're like, what can we do to keep it going? We'll go back a couple of generations, and well, who will be the mother of worms
Exactly
in
right.
Dune in this
The
version
old
of it?
the old Shai Halud. Going back to the whole thing with the lockers, I like this from Madsy. Yeah, they're still in there. They aren't called lockers for nothing. Exactly right. How did you fix your disabled population in the school? We just chucked them in and put the lockers in front. No one ever needs to know the truth. Unbelievable. Anyway, so that's Dune Prophecy. As I said, wait and see where it comes out. Max apparently getting their own streaming service. Good luck to them too, which will be very, very cool. Now, I know I've been harking on this, not Harkonnen, but harking on this one for a while about this series, Megalopolis. Well, believe it or not, the film not only gets premiered at Cannes tomorrow, but they have actually produced a proper trailer for it. And I thought, bloody hell, this thing's really sort of going places. And I found this to be quite interesting, and some of the visual imagery is outstanding. There's a lot of history behind it, how it's all being made, and what it's all about. And I don't know if it's still going to get a release anywhere. There's all this talk about what they're going to do with it and whatever else. But I looked at this and I go, I'll tell you what, it doesn't look too bad. I've got old Francis Ford Coppola doing his thing. Did you get a chance to check this out, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think it shows you almost the excesses of society because of how big and opulent it's all looking. I did think it was funny. It starts off the same as Quiet Place Day One with all these asteroids like coming down, and when I saw the trailer come up, I'm like, oh, is this a new? No, it wasn't. Some of the imagery does remind me of the original Metropolis.
Yeah, so the
Just
idea
that
is,
sort of very old-fashioned art nouveau.
yep, no, it's
Sorry.
okay. So you are right in that the whole city is known as New Rome, and apparently gets destroyed in the big asteroid collision thing, whatever. And our main character Caesar gets to redesign and recreate the entire thing. And as the story goes, apparently he has the ability to freeze time, which is what we saw in that first shot thing a couple of weeks ago, where he goes to fall off a building and just freezes there, and he can actually change time in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. And the idea, that's why I think a lot of the whole Roman thing actually occurs before the destruction takes place. And so it's a bit of a conflict between what he wants, the Caesar guy, which is Adam Driver's character, and his nemesis, who actually wants to rebuild the city as it originally was, as I understand it. But the whole Roman thing, as Francis Ford Coppola said, America effectively is almost like the Roman age, just in a modern day form. And to a large degree, if you sit and look at it and you go, well, you can sort of see where the parallels happen to be. The rich get rich and the poor get poor, and it's all about bread and circuses, so to speak. So I really quite like the idea of it. And yeah, visually, it looks really interesting. And of course, with the trailer, of course, there could be shots all completely out of whack. But I don't know. It's certainly something that could actually go places when the time comes. What do you reckon?
And being a Francis Ford Coppola movie, it has a running time of 4.5 hours.
Well, exactly right. So there's definitely a lot of parallels between, as I said, the real world and what they do in the film. But there's a lot of people thinking that. I mean, I found this interesting, right? So I was actually toying with the idea of saying, okay, when is there likely to be a non-franchise science fiction movie released in the cinemas ever again, right? Because everything is franchise based, whether it be your DC movies, your MC movies, your Star Wars movies, even Star Trek, whatever. Are there any left? Is there ever going to be an independent film that gets a theatrical release? And I'm assuming that this one will. So, based on what the trailer shows, it certainly looks like that'd be one to check out in the cinemas when the time comes. Which means, even though we've discussed Megalopolis a few times on this show, we may end up having to discuss it again when we look at it and review it. So, very good.
Yeah, I think we've discussed Megalopolis so many times, they should be sending us complimentary
Exactly right.
tickets.
Which means if we get tickets to go to Cannes tomorrow, see, guys, got to end the show. We've got flights we've got to catch and off to Cannes. As I said, it hasn't even been given distribution rights yet, and I'm curious to see when people have seen it, if they do reviews of it as well. So unbelievable. So very, very cool.
The best thing, Dags, if you and I went to the Cannes Film Festival, would be standing outside the first event we went to and just looking at the screen and going, Cannes!
Absolutely fantastic. And then nobody would get the joke except you and I. So very, very cool. Guy has said it could be interesting for sure. Well, it is made by a legend of the film sort of making business. And so, yes, and he's been developing it for decades. So there you go. Sorry, cannot make it. Yeah, there's had to be a joke in there somewhere, eh? So, yes, very, very cool. I'll be saying, dude, didn't you get your tickets? Mine are sitting right here. I'm at the door. Show's all yours. Unbelievable, which is very, very cool. Yes, so that's that. So we've covered all that off, right? Which is actually good, very, very exciting. And of course, tonight. Now, this movie came out last week. So we're going to be having a bit of a yap about good old Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and these movies with really long titles. You saw it today. I saw it yesterday. And for those who are concerned about spoilers, we probably will be discussing spoilers, so just be aware of that. The first thing that both Aaron and I discussed regarding this film before we went on air is it was made in friggin' New South Wales. Who knew?
Like most authentic Italian pizzas made in New South Wales. But what I thought was funny is you've got the locations that are obviously based on US landmarks. So, you've got buildings and you've got airports and you've got observatories. And then they're in the Australian bush with gum trees and native Australian zebras and things like that.
See, I didn't pick up on that at all. It wasn't until I was reading the end credits and I go, oh my God, it's made think of New South Wales. Oh, film Victoria, and go, holy shit, it was made. It was made. I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't paying attention to that. So at the foliage, and I thought we were joking afterwards. Maybe they had to digitally remove some kangaroos from the background or something like that. But it's made here. So there you go, fans. If that interests you at all, so very, very groovy. So yes,
and it is a fantastic looking movie. You could not tell. I didn't think the digital add-ons into the backgrounds, they've got that spot on now where locations and stuff like that are just perfect.
Yes, and that's one thing that is highlighted in the movie. They've clearly got the digital ape thing down to a pat. Now, I don't even know if the bird is digital, to be frankly honest with you. But if you look at Rise to the Planet of the Apes when they first started doing the digital ape thing to this one, and because there's apes throughout the entire movie in this film, even up close, it's like bloody hell, you just can't tell. So they're putting a lot of time and effort into it, which is probably why this film exists in the first place. Because clearly, once they made War of the Planet of the Apes, they go, well, that's at the end of the story. That's the Caesar trilogy, as they call it. They probably didn't need to make another one, but obviously someone said, no, got to get that story going because we can do all these apes like absolutely Mickey Mouse now. And we've got to put some stuff together for set up yet another trilogy. And if there's a downside to this film, it is clearly designed to set up for future stories. And which means that this one, as a kickoff, is good, but you can be looking at it and going, well, okay, that's great. You've set the seeds in motion, but it needs to be strong enough on its own rather than just saying this is just part one of a 3-part chapter. Do you agree with that?
I do. I did think this stands alone because it was obviously a sort of the hero's journey storyline for Caesar.
Noah.
For Noah, and then it sort of goes on at the end where it leads into where this trilogy is going to go.
Well, that's right. And it has a unique sort of scenario. There's a lot of things that are very reminiscent of previous movies. Like there's a sequence where they have the apes are hunting the humans, which is straight out of the original movie. Actually, it looks the same to a large degree because the apes are on the horses carrying the nets and they're trying to get all the people in the nets. And they capture all these dudes. And if you remember the original movie, I think it's Taylor who gets out of them. And in this case, it's May who gets out. So it's almost replicating the original movie. So there's a lot of things where they sort of replicate what they've done previously. And some people thought that the concept of because you had the bad guy, whose name I've completely forgotten. Proximus Caesar was actually very similar to the character, the Woody Harrelson's character in War of the Planet of the Apes, where it's like the hero's up against the bad guy. The bad guy's really nasty, just complete megalomaniac sort of mindset. And there was a mindset of a feeling of saying, we're just replicating the same sort of storyline. And to a degree, I can kind of see that. What they're trying to do for this is to say, and you can see what the mindset, what the thinking was. Well, the ape society is now all harmonious and happy. We've got to introduce the conflict somewhere. And you can't just have one tribe of apes fighting against another tribe. That isn't going to work. That's not going to sell tickets. So they've got to introduce the human element and they've got to ramp up the intelligence of the humans. And whether that works for the overall story or not, I don't know. But clearly that's the angle that they're going with. Yeah.
Yeah, I recognized elements from a lot of the original Planet of the Apes movies, different bits and pieces that they kind of picked and put into this movie. I did think it was a really good movie. I did. It wasn't as big an action movie as I thought it was going to be. It
Mm,
was more of a journey movie, I guess. I did love when they mimicked scenes from the original Planet of the Apes. The Jerry Goldsmith movie came in because the Planet of
yeah,
the Apes is an absolutely iconic, fantastic score. And in that scene you were talking about, they used his music. And there's another scene. This is spoilers, but it's not really a plot spoiler.
no.
They have the bodies strung up
Yes.
on the crosses,
Mm.
like they do in the original Apes, and the original ape music
Music
came in
to
when
go
they
with
were
it.
showing those images as well. So I did like that they made those nods to original ape fans.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I heard the music as well. I go, oh, that's actually very, very clever. It was very, very subtle. It says "scene on the bridge," and I thought that was actually kind of groovy. So the focal point is you got the ape tribe. It's all great and wonderful. You got wonderful. You got Noah there, and you got the bad guys come in and they're doing their thing, and you go, well, okay, so be it, Jedi. So the question is now with the original movie when Taylor was there, he was obviously an astronaut from the future. He comes up and he's stuck with all these humans who are all mute and they can't talk and whatever else. In this case, you've got the character of May, and she can. She is intelligent and can speak, and there's not a problem whatsoever. She goes by the name of Noah, but her real name is May. And for a period of time, okay, she looks completely different to all the other humans. She's dressed differently. She sounds different. She's clearly very switched on. And for part of the movie, I was thinking, oh, maybe this is a hark back to the original movies and the 68 film, where if you watch Rise of the Planet of the Apes, in the scene in the zoo thing, in the background in the TV set, the Icarus or the Liberty One or whatever it's called takes off. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if she was
Yep.
on that ship and she's actually gone forward in time and crash landed on the today's thing and has escaped the ship and it's like she's the astronaut from that ship. And that's what I thought she was up until the end of they show where she's coming from. And I thought, that's different. They've just like
Yeah.
replicated the original movie, but used her instead of Taylor. Did you think that at all?
I, I actually thought that was going to happen, and I actually maybe think that might have been a better ending, but I guess they went a different way. I did think they cheated with the way that they portrayed her because when she was first introduced, they she acted like a feral human. She was like running around on all fours and
Yeah,
jittery and stuff. And then when she spoke, she stood up, and you're like, oh, she's in modern clothes, and
yeah.
she's not wearing skins and stuff like the other ones. And I thought that is a bit of a cheat, but she was trying to pretend to be like one of the ferals, I guess, kind of thing. But I thought she was a good character. I liked. Well, look, this is a spoiler, but I don't know where it's going. They said that Caesar called all of the female humans
Noah's
Nova, and
Nova.
then the symbol that they have for Caesar looks like a supernova as well. Sorry, and I do wonder if that's going to come back into it in the future. She ends up with that logo at
Yeah, I
the end,
picked up
doesn't
on
she?
I picked up on the logo straight away. You're actually on the wrong track, and it's actually based. I knew this before I even dug up the information. Right, the symbol is based on when from Rise of the Planet of the Apes when he's inside the attic, and that was the window that he looked out of, which is that
Yep.
image there.
Ah,
And so because I saw that symbol, I go, where have I said that before? Oh yeah, I remember it was in Rise because he spent most of his child life in that room upstairs, and they've just used that. So, and I think that got incorporated in War as well. So, I haven't seen War on the Planet of the Apes for a long time, but no, it's an interesting way of looking at it. But no, that's actually sort of the history where it came from. And of course, the idea is, I thought it was interesting. So, the story is a little bit like Watchmen, the TV series, to a large degree, where you've got the writings of a person or a being who's been dead for a long time, and the writings get perverted and twisted around. So it's similar to Rorschach's journals, which he wrote in Watchmen when he died, and then he watched them in TV series. They've read the words and then completely misinterpreted what he was originally all about. And it's almost a similar thing here, where you got Proxima Caesar saying, "Okay, we're replicating what Caesar did," but of course it's completely wrong. So in his version, apes do kill apes, okay, and things like that. So which is obviously Caesar was dead against. So you do wonder if that's like uh, an allegory of like how religion works. You know, religion's been around for thousands of years. Maybe how it was originally set up once upon a time to how it is today has been sort of mutated, for want of a better term, over the generations. Maybe it's an example
yeah.
of that. You know, the Chinese whispers scenario. So I don't know.
So, did you think, and this is not a spoiler because it's wrong, did you think when they opened the vault it was going to contain the mutants and the bomb from beneath the Planet of the
No,
Apes?
I didn't think that at all. So I was trying to work out where that was, and I had to look it up, and there was actually a name of it. It's somewhere set in the west of California. I don't think it's actually. I mean, the place is real, but I don't think there's actually like a silo there. And I couldn't work out
Yeah.
why would the water line be higher than the door. That one kind of didn't make sense to me at all. And of course, you got William. I haven't got a picture of it. William Macy's character. And I thought, well, that was a bit of a left field one. I was like, okay, why is he there? I think he was supposed to represent the audience. It's like the audience talking. It's like, okay,
Yes.
we need more information. Oh, he'll fill it in, and give us an idea as to what's going on with everything. But yeah, there was some interesting elements of it that kind of worked, and other parts you go, all right, we're just sort of reinventing what we've seen previously. And I thought, yeah, I don't know if it still holds a patch over the original Caesar trilogy. But having said that, we don't really know where it's going, and it could really pick up as we go along. Maybe like the original movies, as in Rise of the Planet of the Apes was great, but Dawn was spectacular. In my opinion, I loved Dawn. I thought it was just one of the best films I'd ever seen. So maybe the second movie in this series could end up being the same thing. But one thing's for sure, they're trying to recreate that whole thing. It's the humans versus the apes, and blah, 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 blah. Been there, done that. So why no one can live in peace? Why can't they just all live in harmony there, Mr. Aaron? What's the deal with that?
I don't know. I am thinking. I look. I don't know. It's all speculation. I am thinking they're going to do the whole try to go back in time and change what happened, but the apes are going to escape back, like escape from the Planet of the Apes or something like that. They have introduced a whole lot of elements that we never really had in the original Apes movies.
Mm.
And it was strange at the end. Suddenly, oh yeah, the humans are okay. They're in a bunker and they're working against everything. I did think that was a very. I didn't see that happening at the end. I thought she was going to get back with the hard drive and it was going to be her rocket ship or something.
Yeah, yeah, I tend to agree with you. That one sort of threw me off, and I thought, okay, that kind of it doesn't kind of work because when the virus gets released, turns all the humans mute and dumb and whatever else, and suddenly there's this entire section of people who go, oh, no, we're perfectly okay, and you go, and remember this is like 300 years later, and you go, all right, that probably strains the credibility a little bit, but it is what it is. And also one thing that did work, it kind of reminded me of like I Am Legend, all the busted cities, the decayed cities, and the buildings. Oh, that looks grouse. That looks awesome. And of course, it does make sense that once human civilization has crumbled, that vegetation will take over. Yes, like nature just finds a way, and then
Take
people
over.
would actually, or apes would use those structures to sort of live in. And I thought that was actually really good. The visually, it was, as you said earlier, was spectacular. Could be faulted.
Could be one of those things where if the trilogy really is good, you know, you go to New Zealand to go to Hobbiton, maybe in New South Wales, they're set up like the Planet of the Apes experience where you can go to the locations from Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, they'll go see that like that big electrical pylon tower. Just climb up there and just have a whale of a time. Yeah, look, it's well worth having a good look at. You've got to be a bit of an Apes fan to really dial into it. I think if you're just like half, you may not get much out of it. Aaron and myself are clearly big Potter fans, and I was keen to sort of see how this worked. It probably could have been a little bit more gripping. I mean, unlike say Rise of the Planet of the Apes, where you see how Caesar gets born and how he gets like how he's intelligence grows. Here, it kind of is just given to you. So the question is to do with May, the female. It does show, and I think this is actually quite important. In the movie, they're saying, oh, the humans are dangerous. So Proxima Caesar says to Noah, careful, humans are dangerous. And she proves that in front of them, right? And she's like, and I
Yeah,
go, guys, are you taking notes here? It's like you really almost got to get rid of her because she's just bad news. And if anything was to prove how bad humans are to other humans, that is this is a movie that definitely shows that. So there's definitely a warning message in there for people to say, in the end, no matter how hard human beings try, we just are never going to get along no matter what. We're just too different. Whereas apes, on the other hand, for the most part, they've got it all worked out. So yeah.
I I did think it was interesting that it went back to the ape has killed ape thing, and I did like the idea where the apes were hiding their identity, like the Urukai, by
Yeah.
having those masks on, which I thought was really creepy when they were going around in that section. I thought that was cool. The one thing I thought was a bit of a doesn't makes sense. They make a big point all the way through a couple of times how much humans stink, and the worst thing about having to share stuff with the humans is like if she sits by the fire, except when they're creeping around at night through millions of apes where not a single one of them smells her.
Actually, that's a very good observation. Actually, funny enough, they even brought that up in the original movie with Zira in the zoo. They're saying that they all sort of stink,
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool. Karana said the name Caesar salad after Caesar from Planet of the Apes. Not fake. I find that hard to believe, actually, but there you go. Remember, Caesar didn't appear in the Planet of the Apes series until Escape from the Planet of the Apes in the 70s, and I'm sure a Caesar salad existed long before then. So, but anyway, work with the joke. It's all good stuff. So, what do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron? A Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Oh my God, such a long title. I couldn't even put it in the promo. So very
I'll
good.
give it about a 7. Give it about a 7 out of 10. I thought it was worth seeing at the cinema for sure.
Very cool stuff. Absolutely awesome. Well, guess what, fans? I've got to make sure I push more buttons here. So, guess what? So, that's actually brings us right through the middle of the show. Now it's time for something really, really cool. Now, Aaron, he's going to have to do something with his internet connection because he keeps chopping out and jumping up. He's doing his own scratch mix at the moment, but we'll just stick with it. It is all good. Hang on. Don't have to leave the screen too soon, dude. And guess what? Oh, he's going to do it live on air. He's doing it right now.
Across to my phone internet, so we'll see if that improves things, because it'll be Kale is sucking up the bandwidth playing online gaming or something, so I apologize for that, but we'll see if we can.
I've lost my dude, and you know what, because it was about time for this
a question.
Very good.
And are we back and better? Is this working better now? I'm on the phone.
Very, very good. That's okay. Look, okay. At least you're there. I can see it. It's all good fun. Yes. Okay. Good on you, Ange. Caesar salad was invented in the early 1920s by Caesar Cardini. Yes. Very, very good. All right. We're not talking about salads. We've actually got an important question I've got to ask my lad. This one's actually relevant to everybody who's actually watching us right now. Okay. So the question is, are there more sci-fi fans around today than 40 years ago? And before you answer that question, if you're wondering what the picture is, it's actually from a fan event in 1987. There's Jeffro, who's right there. Look at that, young Jeffro. Are there more sci-fi fans around than there were 40 years ago? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because with all the expos and the pop culture things going on, it seems to be that fandom has permeated all the way through all generations now, and it seems to be everywhere. But it looks vastly different to how I remember it back in my day. What do you reckon, dude?
My opinion would be no, there aren't. That might be controversial. I would say sci-fi is more accepted in society and people enjoy it, but it gets to the point where, are you a fan of something? No. I would say there was more hardcore fans back in the 70s and 80s and maybe the 90s than there are now. And that's because you might get, 30,000 people going each day to a supernova convention, but do they join the fan clubs? No. Do they actually participate in fandom outside of going to those events? No. They might be on a forum online, but I don't think that's the same as going to an Austrek meeting once a month, helping to run fandom, planning their own activities, collecting stuff, more than going and getting a pop every time there's a convention on. People go along to these events like you'd go to the show, but if you went to the show to get a Star Trek show bag or something, you wouldn't say you're a mega fan. If you're going to Austrek every week, or you're going to the Star Wars fan club or the Melbourne Sci-Fi club, you're obviously flying your flag as a fan. You might even go to these events and say, oh, I'm a fan of Supernatural, or I'm a fan of this, but I don't think the culture is the same as it is if you grew up in the 70s and 80s and actually participated in organized fandom.
Okay, look, that's fine. So I'm curious to see whether young people, like, how can I put this? It seems to be now that it's more, I would look at it, say, socially acceptable to say that you're a fan of something than what it once was, if that makes sense. Now, there's more stuff available, to be fair, like the Japanese animation side of things is far more available now than say in the 1980s, where it was really, really just like this small, tight-knit community of people because it was all through videotapes and whatever else. So it's like anime fandom has really, really picked up, and there are a lot of people, younger people in particular, who are now a part of that. And you do wonder if you could transport those same people back 40 years ago, would they have still shown the same level of interest in this material, knowing that there were no places that they could show their interest, if that makes sense? Because we've got the events now, and I agree that's just dragged everybody out of the woodwork. But would those people have existed back in our day where these events just didn't exist, if that makes sense?
I have a question for you. It's about fandom, I guess. Back in the day where Star Trek Next Generation was one of the most popular things to be shown in an event, and they were hiring out basketball halls and starting with more than 100 people watching the episodes that had been flown across from America. And as soon as they stopped doing that, all the people who were coming to watch the episodes stopped going to the meetings. Were they fans?
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Because it's very interesting that we had a mate of ours who tried to sort of create the levels of fandom, if you will. He said there were 7 levels, right? And
Yeah.
it's a bit of an iffy one whether you include collectors or not collectors. And he said level 1 is people who watch something and that's it. They watch it, they go, "Oh, I love that," but that's as far as it goes. And as you go up the levels, you start joining fan groups and wanting to talk about it with other people and whatever else. The thing I find interesting is that there may have been people decades ago who said, "I really like this material, but I will not talk about it. I don't want anybody to know that I'm a fan of it." Whereas now, those same people would say, "Yep, absolutely. I'll go to a Supernova and I'll go to an Oz Comic Con and I'll fly the flag big time." And so there's definitely a school of thought to say, yes, the numbers, the physical numbers were there, but the willingness to participate anything beyond just watching the show or even discussing it with anybody wasn't. And I can, from a first-hand perspective, say that I was in a scenario one time. Obviously, I'm a big Star Trek fan. I've been a part of Australia for 40 years, where there were times when I wouldn't talk about it with other people because it wasn't the right environment. This was a work environment. Fast forward 10 years or so years later, I'm working in a different part of the office, and all of a sudden, I'm telling everybody what I was and what I liked. Um, so it's certainly possible that the fan interest was there, but it just never gravitated beyond anything other than just watching stuff on screen. And you are right; those people who went to those Austrek meetings to watch those Star Trek episodes, because Next Generation was the big thing, that was it. They watched, they walked out, and done. And for all we know, they never spoke about it with anybody. So, yeah, interesting.
Interesting question.
Go on. Yep, go for it.
It is an interesting question. It is one of those things where maybe if you're doing it in levels of fandom, where if you are a fan because you like the show, yes, there are more people who are fans these days because there's so many different genre shows. I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of sci-fi because it was an expensive genre for them to produce. And the other thing, which has changed thing, there's been a lot of quality sci-fi, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, where people who maybe wouldn't have fantasy got into the quality of movies like that. That's really made it more acceptable to say I'm a fan of something. But like you say, with the 7 levels of fandom, are there those top 2 levels? Are there more of them now or back in the day? And I would say back in the day.
Well, as you've pointed out to me back when you were in school and you were a fan of Doctor Who, but nobody else was, by today's standards, if you went to a high school today, you probably find that 30% of the kids, or maybe 20%, are all fans of Doctor Who. Whereas in your case, you were on your own. In fact, you were derided for being a fan. Now, if anything, you'd probably be applauded for being a fan.
Yeah.
So I thought that's an interesting contrast just in one or one and a half generations. Yeah.
Yeah. So it has changed a lot. Maybe it is one of those things where there aren't more or there aren't less. Just the way fandom celebrates the shows they like is different.
Yeah, and definitely the modern world has helped because people realize, oh, there are other people out there who are just like yourselves, rather than saying you're on your own. And like Ange said, if they were, they've gone underground. Maybe that was true. I certainly think that there may have been the interest at that time, but people just didn't want anybody else to know about it. They just kept it quiet. Wouldn't even wear the T-shirts or anything. They just said, you know what, I'll watch it, but that's as far as I go. You almost have to drag out a conversation from me, which is kind of sad. I like this one. You join the V Club to get news and about shows, to meet like-minded people so you can talk about them, to swap and obtain information and episodes. The thing was, if you didn't want to talk about it, you just loved it, but you're thinking, no, it's too geeky, too nerdy to actually physically discuss it with other people. There are a lot of people who like that. They just like they're hidden in their little rooms and they go, I'm just not going to talk about it with anyone, which is a kind of a bizarre way to be. But I used to always work on that argument that if you like something and you just start discussing it with somebody else, you're now moving into a different territory. You're moving beyond just a casual viewer. You're moving into dare I say, the fan realm where you want to discuss it, and that's a completely different thing. You can use the example, both of us, to say, oh, there's something we'll look at or something we'll watch or take on board, but that's it. I don't want to talk about it. I like watching yacht racing. I'm not going to talk about yacht racing. I might, when they have the Sydney to Hobart yacht race, I'll watch it on Boxing Day. That's it, done. I don't want to talk about yachts. So I just like watching it. It's probably the same principle to a large degree. So whereas you and I obviously took it a few steps further, I just wonder if given the option, there are more people now taking it a few steps further because the outlet is there and it's been more culturally accepted. I mean, pop culture now is everywhere. So where it once wasn't.
The other thing, there's probably people that spend hours and hours and hours talking about their favorite show online, and they don't actually impact the outside world with their physical fandom either. And the really disappointing thing is when Dags and I launched the Australasian Dune fan club, we didn't get a single application.
You know what? It was the cat milking that turned them off. And it is interesting, and that's a good point. There could be a lot of people who do it all online and will not attend any event, regardless of whether it's a pop culture expo or anything at all. They'll just go, no, I'll type out my messages. I'm an anonymous user, and it's as far as it goes. But I think that if you were to judge apples for apples, there would have been more of those in the 80s had that outlet existed versus what we have today. And I'll leave this one as an example. I had a friend of mine. She once said that when she was a bit like you, she was bullied in school because she was a sci-fi fan, and this person's way younger than you. And then she goes to a pop culture expos, and her bullies, she sees them there and go, what the hell, man? You used to pick on me for being a fan, and here you are too, because it's now socially acceptable. And there's something in there for all of us, I think. So
it happens like that. The other thing that's probably changed fandom a lot. I used to go to a lot of toy fairs, and you'd only catch up with on the days. You don't mix with those people any other time apart from, once every 3 months where there's a toy fair. And now you friend them on Facebook and you can catch up them and leave them a message or ask them about toys anytime you want, even though they're not really friends. They're associates who have a similar interest in you. So the networking is definitely a lot better now than it was in the 80s and 90s before the internet technology was there.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Excuse me, as William said, it's popular now to be seen going to the big events, and that's true, and it's kind of amazing. You go, oh my God, these are all my people, and you go, okay, if we could transport this event 30, 40 years in the past, would you all be here? And you do wonder. So
the other thing I
find
a bit pseudo fandom is, are the people there because they really love the show, or are the people there because they want a picture with an actor that they can put on their Instagram page and get 1 million likes for? We didn't have that, instant social media recognition where people love the likes on social media kind of thing. I mean, I'm guilty of going to events and then putting the pictures up online and seeing how many people are interested in it after I go. That's a totally different thing from when we were going to these events. We mixed with the actors and made a photo. We didn't go and run online and up and talk about it to our friends.
Yeah, true. Grant said that people get their information from the internet. They don't need to seek out people to find information. That's completely true. And Rusty Babes made a mention about at his school there were some fans in his class, sci-fi books and whatever else, not big in numbers. And I think that's the case. Whereas now I wouldn't be surprised if in high schools or whatever they might actually have sci-fi clubs.
I tell you what.
No idea. No, he's frozen. We've lost him. There we go. Need to get Kale off that computer, dude. So, William said it was double damned at school. He liked
you guys are getting me, or if it's dropping out again, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the horrible internet tonight.
That's okay. Yes, he was. He was a bit like you, like Doctor Who at school, but not many other people did. So, anyway, so if it turns out that there are more fans around today, good on them. Obviously, there's a lot more outlets for them, which is absolutely fantastic. So. good stuff to everybody. So yes, very, very cool. And of course, as we've seen in your stores, families can come in where it's not just the adults who are fans, but also the kids as well, and they're all sharing it as one, which is a very, very groovy. Good stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Love it. All right. So guess what, fans? This was something we wanted to have a bit of a quick chat about. It was about unexpected TV show success stories. And this is talking about a show that'll come out and suddenly be a massive hit. Now, we're not talking primarily franchise shows because, like, for example, Firefly just came out in absolute nowhere and absolutely took the world by storm. And there are a lot of shows you go, okay, you got all your Star Treks and you got all your Doctor Who's and even Star Wars to a large degree, blah, blah, blah. But there are a lot of shows. Now, success, of course, it can be ranked either by fan acknowledgement or financial success or the fact that they just went on for 100 years. But I think if you say to someone, can you name some really, really good TV shows that weren't part of a massive franchise? What were they? And you're probably surprised at what people come up with, because there's a lot of really good shows out there that just became great, but they were not meant to be great. It just happened that way. What do you reckon, dude? I know you had a few good ones today.
Yeah, it is. It is sometimes surprising what catches the general populace's imagination compared to what is released and you think is fantastic and then dies after a couple of episodes. So it's interesting to look at some of these shows that actually did better than expected.
Well, Karan's come up with the obvious one, Orville. Even I didn't think of that today, but yes, the Orville was one,
Yeah.
and I think a lot to do. The Orville really was its timing because it was going up against Discovery at the time. But yeah, you got the might of the entire Star Trek franchise, and then this other show pops up, and it
Yeah.
almost wipes Discovery out. And Orville is an excellent example of a show that probably was only meant to go for a season, bit of shits and giggles. Now suddenly it's become this bit of a behemoth, has this massive fan following, and good on it too, because it's a damn good quality show. Grant's mentioned Farscape. I never watched Farscape. I don't know if you did. I know it was actually it got kind of destroyed by the free-to-air networks at the time, because I think it was designed for an adult audience, but it was put in the children's time slot, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I never watched Farscape, but any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was one of those shows where I think it was Channel 9 gave it 3 weeks in sort of a regular time slot where people could catch it, and then they shunted it to like 11 o'clock at night, where probably it was easier to watch and it was on more regularly. But, you know, Sci-Fi in the sort of 90s and 2000s, they used to do that. It used to be if it doesn't catch the audience in a week or two, it's gone. Even Star Trek Next Generation couldn't manage to get a steady audience in Australia.
So this is one that you brought up today, and it's funny because I probably put in some comments, and I'm agreeing with you. This one you come up with, of course, when this show came out, it was a mega super success. Of course, we're talking about the X-Files. I mean, talk about a rags to riches story. Just these two people, FBI guys, doing their thing, and X-Files was friggin' fantastic, and it actually was the benchmark TV show of the 90s for a while, I would have to say, in terms of contemporary-based things. So, yeah, what do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, it was one of those things. If Fox didn't have The Simpsons and the X-Files, they'd have probably died. I do remember being shocked that there was a show with, you know, aliens and the FBI and conspiracies, and my normal friends were watching it and acting all sort of, oh, we want to know all about this and that. And I think it was one of those, I've told the story where it took the actual producers by such a shock. There was no merchandising for about a year and a half because they just didn't think it was that type of show. And then they produced a comic and it sold out instantly. It was impossible to find. And then X-Files posters and t-shirts were everywhere in sort of the what's new in the Get Granny Maze, which was always an indication what was a hit with the general populace, not like Minotaur Books has three copies kind of thing.
I think what worked for the X-Files is they both had a male and a female lead, right? And they were on equal standing with each other. And both of them were really good performances, really good characters. And you could say, I can dial into one more than the other, or you dial into both of them. And they just worked off each other really well. And that was like an excellent teaming. If it had been two males, I don't think it would have worked anywhere near as much. It's like, you know, people could dial into each character. And and the stories were fantastic. And I do know that when they made it, they said they were looking at like making a cinematic quality, because TV shows used to have this stigma associated with them of being television produced. And the fact that it looks cinematic with really good cinematography and great stories and lighting and whatever else, and as I said, good characterizations, it just set the world on fire. It set a standard for other shows to follow. Yeah.
Well, it took it seriously, and I think that's why it captured a general audience, because sometimes sci-fi shows are sort of poo-pooed because they're silly. But this definitely wasn't a silly show, and I think what was
Mm.
really smart was having Scully on it, questioning everything, because that's the audience going, there's no such thing as UFOs, there's no such thing as Bigfoot. And then you've got the people who like that elements, and Mulder proves them right as well. So it really had a foot in both camps, and I think that's why it took off so quickly.
So a few people have put some comments in. Moneybags has come up with Babylon 5. Babylon 5 was definitely an out-of-the-box success story that got created by JMS and originally pitched it to Paramount. They said no, so he went off and did his own show. And it really took off. The irony is that by today's standards, there are either people who
Yeah.
love the show and swear by it, and those who've never seen it and never will see it. It's just one of those programs that had its time, did awesome when it came out. I mean, it was in the time before streaming, and of course, there was a time when it was up against Deep Space Nine and whatever else. But those who are devotees of Babylon 5 still swear by today, as I said earlier. And it was just a fantastic show. It was one of the first TV shows to use CGI for its visual effects, which meant they could always be different all the time. And awesome characters. And it really was something that a lot of people dialed into. Excellent, excellent series, even if by today's standards, most people won't even see it anymore.
Yeah, it's funny. Karen is saying doesn't recall many shows that started on TV and went to the cinema as a big budget movie like The X-Files. The only other one I can think of is the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. So you're absolutely right there. There's not many that do that. Start as a small budget show. Then, of course, I guess there's Star Trek as well.
Yes, exactly right. So one of the other ones that was sort of popped up as well, and I agree with this, if I can find the damn picture for it, is what was Daniel also said was about the new Battlestar Galactica. Now, I know there's references from Cran for the original Battlestar, but the new one is the one that set the world on fire because everything was going against it, right? All the original Battlestar fans thought the original series was the ants pants. This thing comes out and turns the entire franchise on its head. Very adult, very serious, no friggin' boxies, no damn daggets, none of that rubbish, and intense, hardcore, serious drama. And I think for a lot of people who really love hardcore sci-fi, Battlestar is a show that they just couldn't go past, even if there were a lot of people who still had a lot of love for the original series, but that series had its place. This show was definitely where it all got ramped up and became a lot more adult entertainment, which was really, really good.
And I think it was another one of those shows that started with a made-for-television movie and wouldn't have gone on to a series unless it had got amazing ratings, and it did. And they did fix some of the stuff that fans really didn't like. So you'll notice Boxy is in the pilot, and then he suddenly disappears and is never ever mentioned again. So it was one of those, but you're absolutely right. Everyone before it came out, you can't have a female Starbuck, you can't do that with Boomer, and then it comes out and everyone was like, well, this is actually really, really good.
Yeah, and I love the pilot thing was like the movie of 2.5 hours, and it was just like, this is just my kind of show. I can really dial into it because I like something that's gritty and intense. Mate, we made a point about Space Above and Beyond. I never watched Saab. When I think of Saab, I actually think of the cars. But I know it had a good fan following, and it was like, yeah, good on it too. But it kind of just came and went, and now it's just lost in the midst of history. I don't know if you ever watched Saab before.
I did. It was probably the opposite to what we're looking at, where they really pushed it and wanted it to do well, and it sort of disappeared after one season, which is a bit sad because I do remember at the time it was almost like, wow, this has Star Wars visual effects on the small screen, and it had a continuing plot storyline, not like just episodes of the week kind of thing, but just didn't get the audience it needed to be made.
True. This is a TV series that got inspired by a movie, so it's the opposite of what you said. I never watched it. I had no interest in it whatsoever, but I did love the movie. When it came out, Stargate SG-1, freaking hell, this went for 11 years or so. This thing just went absolute gangbusters.
It did it, and it spun off two different other series. I think there was Atlantis and another one.
Universe.
And apparently, the deal you'll see a lot of American series runs for 7 years because there's the first season, then a 6-year contract, and then after that the actors can renegotiate, and it's too expensive because they want too much money. Stargate, they actually had so much fun making the episodes, when it got to that renegotiation, they said, no, we just want to keep making it because we all have so much fun. So they did. So that's why it went for like so many seasons.
There you go. The pilot of Space Above and Beyond was filmed at Anna Bay in Port Stephens. Oh, there you go. There you go. As I said, I never watched it. I wasn't near.
And
Sorry,
one
what?
of the other little it's a fun factoid. The futuristic money in it was all Australian because we'd just gone over to plastic money, and whoever were the producers were like, "Oh, that's really clever." So you see them betting and gambling, and it's all like Australian money, which was probably fine everywhere else in the world except for Australia.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Ads is right. BSG was great, except the last episode. It was like, yeah, okay. But you know what? The series was so good for its 5 years, and it only ran for 5 years. You can kind of like let that one go through the keeper. There was a whole lot that came out that were like absolute massive talking points. Remember when Heroes came out? I was discussing this with someone recently. For the first 2 years, this was the greatest show in the universe. Even that was just X-Men without the costumes. Remember, Save the Cheerleader, Save the World, and then in the third season, it was like the ugly cousin of the family. No one ever talked about it. For those 2 years, though, Heroes was the greatest show ever.
Yeah.
And even I watched some of it for a period of time, and but I thought it was a massive success.
Yeah, it was. It was, again, one of those, like you said, it had sayings in it that caught on. And I think the series suffered from, maybe they had the first series planned and knew what they were doing. And then it was such a big success, they didn't know what to do after that. So the second series was a marked step down in storytelling. And by series 3, they'd lost the audience.
I do wonder. So yeah, Heroes died off. It did. It just like overnight. It's like, how can something everyone's talking about suddenly no one's talking about? Like it just never happened. Buffy and Charmed. No, they're more fantasy than sci-fi. So Andrew's mentioned Lost. I never watched Lost, but I think you did, didn't you?
I gave up on Lost. I thought it started really. He's absolutely right. No one knew it was going to be as big as it was, and everyone was like, "Oh, what's happening on Lost? What's happening on Lost?" And then after a couple of years, they realized, no, not even the writers realized what's happening on Lost. And then I think it lost the audience. That's what was lost. The ratings.
Very, very good. I got that. So Grant thinks regarding Lost, there was it Lost? No, Heroes. There was a writer's strike that killed it, and Collins mentioned the same thing. Bit of a shame that that's the case. But I do find it interesting, and like your store is a good example when people come into the shop and they start talking about shows and things that they've watched. You go, okay, clear. And if it's multiple people, you go, clearly the people are dialing into this, which is really, really great. Because you and I talk about various series. There's shows that you've introduced me to, and there's a lot of things that are really good quality, but they're not necessarily like everyone's watching them, which has been unfortunate. A classic example, this one I got put onto was The Expanse. Actually, Ads, who's watching tonight, actually got me onto The Expanse. And I would never watched it if it wasn't because of a recommendation from someone else. But that was a damn good series. And, of course, it was a hard-hitting series as well, which I sort of, as I mentioned earlier, really enjoyed. And the concepts behind it made a lot of sense. So there are some shows you think it's a shame they weren't more dialed into regarding the general population out there. But there's a lot of good quality out there if you look for it.
Yeah.
One that did come out that is on TV at the moment, if you got subscription to it, is For All Mankind. It's on Apple. I mean, I'm not who's subscribed to Apple, for crying out loud. I saw the first 4 episodes of this and thought this is absolutely ingenious. And for those who don't know, it's an alternative reality where the Russians land on the moon in 1969, not the Americans, and where it all goes from there. But Apple, I've heard awesome things about For All Mankind, but it's on the worst streaming service of the planet.
I don't know if it's one that everyone's talking about, though. I've heard good things about it, but you can't go down and get your For All Mankind T-shirt at the at Kmart, can you?
Yeah, well, that's true. That's a very good point. Guy made mention of La Brea. That was on free-to-air TV not that long ago. That was also made in Australia as well. Andrew said Expanse books. I didn't know they were making books for the Expanse. That was really, really good. The thing I find interesting is when a series finishes and you sit there going, I want more, give me more. You don't want it to do an X-Files and keep going to the point where it like the audience just vanishes. But if the possibility is for it to keep going, that is great. Now, I'm going to wind the clock right back. When this came out, I bet no one thought this was going to be a hit. And of course, it's the original Twilight Zone. When this came out in the 50s, I mean, this would have been such a risk to do a science fiction show. This is obviously before Outer Limits on TV, which is still a relatively new thing. And it just went places. And even like 50 years later, actually more than that, 70 years later, it's still the benchmark of all the Twilight Zone iterations. And I've got to say, that is awesome.
It is crazy because you think the Twilight Zone, it was original. It wasn't. There was Night Gallery and there was Boris Karloff Presents and Alfred Hitchcock's stuff. And it was all the same kind of thing, stories with a twist. But for some reason, Twilight Zone stands head and shoulders above those shows and has come back and has memorable episodes that everyone talks about. I mean, at the beginning, we were talking about To Serve Man because it's entered that sort of level of public consciousness because some of the episodes are so iconic.
Yes, exactly right. Karan has mentioned Lost in Space. The thing about Lost in Space, of course, it outranked Star Trek at the time. So yeah, who would have thunk it? You know, you would have thought if Star Trek has got such longevity, this is the original series. You would have thought, oh yeah, Lost in Space has got no hope. And in reality, in the 60s, it was actually rating better. Maybe because of the family thing. I don't really know, but yeah, Lost in Space is actually a very good example.
Yeah. Lost in Space, they retooled really fast, which I think is what got the ratings because they took into account who was getting all the fan mail. And it was the robot Dr. Smith and Will Robinson. So they were like, right, they're the ones we're going to base the series around, which cheesed off a lot of the other cast members, actually.
It did. All right, we're about to wrap up. We'll just chuck in one more. Good old Kolchak the Night Stalker. I think everybody loved this in the 70s when it came out. It could have gone places forever. It was such a great show, and the only reason why it finished is because Darren McGavin, the actor who was almost in every scene in the entire series, said, "I've had enough. I want to go home. Take my bat and ball and go home."
He was rewriting scripts, he was directing, he was producing, and he was acting in it. And he would have done more, and he tried to negotiate a better pay for it, and they just said no. But the interesting thing about Kolchak, it was originally called The Night Stalker. It was a made-for-TV movie. It was the biggest rating for a made-for-TV movie ever at that point, and it blew the network away. They just did not think that was going to happen, so they span it into a second movie that just did as well, and then the TV series.
Absolutely awesome.
And it's one that a lot of people have forgotten about, I think.
Yeah, true. Except for us hardcore fans, and of course, yeah, Fallout is the current show, which is just absolutely setting all the goals, which is absolutely awesome. Clearly, this is a topic we could talk about for hours, right? I love it. This is what it's all about, talking stuff, just getting ideas out there, get people thinking. And it's like, oh, I remember this show, I remember that show. There's even shows we didn't even touch on. We may even come back to this topic again somewhere down the track, which is absolutely very, very cool. We do have to sign off. Before we do that, of course, don't forget to check out the Sci-Fi Zone thing where all the action is, which is very, very cool. New stuff coming out all the time. And, of course, Aaron's store, mate. No Kolchak collectibles, but other things that will amuse you. Is that right, Mr. Aaron?
Yep, and Dags will be there this Saturday. So if you want to come down and talk about all the TV shows that you think did better than they were expected to, he'll be the one fielding those questions.
Absolutely fantastic. And I go, yeah, whatever. And as soon as if I hear the term Docky Who, I'm going to go switch off, talk to the elbow because the hand is busy. Yeah, exactly right. All right, well, we're going to buzz off, party hard and rock on. Hopefully we can get Aaron's connection sorted out so next time he's a bit more free-flowing and not so... We'll discuss that after the show. Anyway, guys, party hard and rock on. We'll see you all, funnily enough, for DNA reviews next Tuesday, talking about Docky Who. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next Thursday. Okay, take care and look after yourselves, and we'll see you later.
Have a good night, guys. See you.